Hey, Rigsby here with the winning coach. And today we're going to talk about how you can win the game and still lose the season. Let's get to it. A team wins, everybody celebrates. We have a record revenue month and everybody's happy. But sometimes that's a lie, right? The scoreboard isn't indicative of what's going on behind the scenes, of what's happening underneath. I mean, let's face it, the scoreboard is just really a result of what happened today in the moment. Maybe one player got hot. Maybe a sales rep really performed at a high level. Maybe you had a launch and you did a bunch of paid in full, so revenue numbers were really high. Maybe the competition was weak. Those are all things that happen here in the moment. But the problem is the game often masks the actual development, the process, the structure, and the season. Well, it reveals the standards in the system. It's going to tell you who you are over time. So that's what we want to talk about today. See, sometimes a short term win, it can it's fool's gold, maybe is the way that I've often said it, right? It can mask things that are happening underneath, but even worse, it can validate bad behaviors, right? Like you can get away with things that you just can't sustain and be effective with over time. I mean, I've seen it on the baseball field countless times where you win a game because the other team just plays poorly. They make a lot of mistakes, they walk batters, they make errors, and you win. And all of a sudden you think, man, we're really good. But then you get exposed as soon as you play a better team, you pay stronger competition. Or in the business world, I see it all the time in businesses that go out there and they sell a bunch of paid in fulls, right? They do prepays. We would see it with these. There was a big program a few years back called the Lose 20 and 6 Challenge. It actually was originated by a late friend and client of mine, Sam Bakhtiar, and it became popularized by Gym Launch. And they would go and create this influx of leads and clients and cash in a business, but it was kind of a bait and switch, and it eroded all the underlying culture that the gym had. It really created mistrust in the marketplace because people knew that you were going to come in and you were told something was free, and then they were going to charge you a bunch of money. And so in the beginning it felt like a victory. You collected a bunch of cash in hand, but you'd see gyms close after a few months of doing this, or all their existing clients who had been with them for years and been loyal, paying, happy customers, they left. And that's what happens when we judge our effectiveness on the score of one game. When we judge things on this one game and we don't zoom out and see the season as a whole. See, because the season, it's going to tell you what you need to know about the standards that you have as a program, as an organization, as a business. And it's also going to tell you if the systems that you're using to meet those standards are working. Are you developing people well enough to consistently meet the standard that it takes to win game after game, to win month after month as a business owner? Or, are we just reliant on the stars aligning and optimal circumstances, weak competition, an audience that we're marketing to that doesn't know much about us, and they don't, and so they just have this kind of blind faith or trust in us going in. So when we think about what it takes to win in the long term, to have sustained success, well, winning a game is a bit of a mirage. But see, it can go even beyond that, right? We need to see what went into winning. Sometimes you can sell your proverbial soul to win in the moment, and it costs you long term. If all you're doing is hustling and grinding and working 20 hours a day to create a short term victory, well, is that sustainable over the long haul? Well, I know with business owners, I talk about this a great deal. I talk about the fact that it's fine to behave like a startup when you're a startup. It's fine to burn the candle at both ends and understand that you're going to have to do everything. But it's not sustainable. You're going to burn yourself out. And if you're still operating like a startup 3, 4, 5 years in, your business is destined to struggle. You are probably destined to have some personal issues. You're going to, you're going to suffer in your relationships. You're going to suffer in your own personal energy and health. And so we need to be able to build a foundation that's sustainable over time if we're going to get the outcomes that we want. See, very rarely do people track what it costs them to get something. Sure, they're going to track the clean metrics, right? They're going to track the ad spend to what it costs to generate revenue or something like that. But there's so many things that we see day in, day out that we can maybe pour ourselves into to win in the moment, but cost us long term. I mean, I think about on a baseball field, you could certainly throw your best pitcher 130 pitches if that's what it took to win a game now. But what would you be sacrificing in the long haul? What kind of damage could you potentially do to that one pitcher and their future and their ability to not only be effective for you as a player for the remainder of the season, but their long-term career? If you're a high school coach, what kind of potential damage are we doing in their ability to go play beyond high school and college, or maybe even beyond that? So when we think about what we're doing now to win the game, we also have to be able to step back and say, is this for the good of the program? Is this for the good of the organization? Is this for the good of the business? And is this something that if we kept these behaviors intact, the habits, the processes, the systems, if we did what we did today in order to win, if we adopted that same way of operating for the next 365 days, for the next 3 to 5 years, what would the results be? And sometimes when you zoom out, you step away, you see like, man, that wouldn't be sustainable at all. And in fact, any positive that might come out of it would be superseded by dozens and dozens of negatives. I've seen this time and time again where people who are in leadership positions are more than happy to grind their team into the ground to meet a short-term quota, to meet a short-term goal. But then the long-term ramifications is they have constant turnover. They have disgruntled employees. They burn out their audience because they kind of sold out to get this one short-term win. And the business suffers over the long haul. Heck, I saw it in a business and I was a co-owner of, where, I kind of handed off some of the leadership, and the person who took the reins kind of did just that. They ground the group into the ground. They became very transactional to try to meet some short-term quotas and short-term wins. And not only did we really fall short of the performances we had been achieving previously, but a lot of the goodwill, a lot of that kind of culture that we had created where everybody was pulling the rope together, it all got eroded. And before long, the team all kind of dissipated. And so just keep that in mind when we're thinking about those short-term wins. Is the way that we're approaching stuff, is this a repeatable kind of system that we can install that is going to work over and over and over? And ideally, the results are going to compound over time. So I'm going to leave you with a couple questions as we wrap this up. So when we think about a short-term win, the first question that I would always want to ask is, what created that victory? What created, whether it's a win on the scoreboard because you beat an inferior opponent, or it's a win in your monthly sales goals because revenue was up, what created that victory? And then the second thing I would say is, what did it cost? And sometimes this is tough to measure because not everything fits, neatly into a spreadsheet. But what kind of energy did it cost? What kind of time did it cost? Is the stuff that we're having to put in to get the outcome, is that a sustainable thing? The third question I'd ask is, did it make us better, or did it just make us busier? And then finally, I would ask this fourth question, and I'd probably do this with about anything that we do. Like, okay, would I want to do this again and again? Would I make this a habit that we're going to do on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, and an annual basis? Is this going to become part of who we are, or was this just a one-time episodic thing? If you ask those questions, I think you're going to get a clear assessment of whether or not you just played to win the game, or you're setting yourself up to succeed for an entire season.